The neon lights of Las Vegas shimmered brighter than ever that evening, as thousands of fans poured into Dolby Live, clutching glittering posters and hearts full of anticipation. It wasn't just another Bruno Mars concert. It was the final night of his sold-out residency, a show that had already gone down in history for its energy, charisma, and flawless execution. But as the crowd took their seats, there was something different in the air, a strange stillness beneath the laughter, a pulse of emotion that no one could quite name. Even the stage crew moved with an unusual quiet reverence, aware that tonight would mark the end of an era. Backstage, Bruno Mars, real name Peter Gene Hernandez, stood in front of a mirror, microphone in hand, head bowed. He wasn't smiling this time. The man known for his electric charm and unshakable confidence looked pensive, almost fragile. A small photograph lay on the dressing table. His late mother, Bernadette San Pedro Bayot, he whispered to himself, "This one's for you, Ma." 2. The song he never wanted to sing again. Bruno Mars had performed in front of millions. He had sung Treasure, Locked Out of Heaven, 24K Magic, and Just the Way You Are countless times. But one song had always remained off limits. When I Was Your Man.to most. It was a heartbreak anthem, a confession of regret, a love song for a woman he had lost. But for Bruno, it was more than that. Hidden behind those melancholy piano chords was something far deeper. The echo of his mother's voice, the lessons she taught him, the pain of losing her too soon. Bernadette passed away in 2013, and in the years that followed, Bruno rarely spoke about her. He turned his grief into silence, letting his music be his only outlet. Whenever journalists asked about When I Was Your Man, he would smile faintly and change the subject. But on this night, the final night in Las Vegas, something inside him shifted. Maybe it was the crowd's energy. Maybe it was the weight of the ending. Or maybe, as many fans later said, she was there with him. 3. This one's for my mom. Halfway through the show, after performing Versace on the floor, Bruno stood still as the lights dimmed. The stage fell silent. For nearly 20 seconds, the crowd waited, whispering, holding their breath. Then, under a single spotlight, he stepped toward the microphone, his eyes glistening. He took a deep breath. And softly, almost like a prayer, he said 4 words that broke every heart in the room. This one's for my mom. The audience erupted, not in screams, but in gasps. Some fans covered their mouths. Others began to cry instantly. The band members looked at each other, realizing what was about to happen. The first piano notes of When I Was Your Man echoed through the theater, haunting, gentle, and impossibly heavy. Bruno began to sing. 4. A voice that trembled with love. His voice, usually smooth and confident, trembled on the very first line. Same bed, but it feels just a little bit bigger now. He closed his eyes as if he were back home in Hawaii, where his mother used to dance in the living room while he played the piano. With every lyric, his emotions poured out, raw, unfiltered, real. When he reached the chorus, his voice cracked. He stepped back from the mic for a moment, wiping his face, but the tears kept coming. The crowd, sensing his pain, sang the next line for him. Thousands of voices filling the air in unison. Too young, too dumb to realize, Bruno smiled through the tears, mouthing thank you to the audience. But when he sang When I Was Your Man, his voice broke completely. It was no longer just a song. It was a confession, a goodbye, a message across time, from a son to the mother who taught him to believe in his dreams. 5. The audience in tears as Bruno Mars sang. The audience transformed into a sea of glistening faces. The flashing phones that usually captured every second of his concerts were lowered. No one wanted to interrupt the sacred moment unfolding before them. In the front row, a woman wearing a 24K Magic Tour shirt clutched her heart, whispering, "He's doing it for her." Beside her, a young man, perhaps no older than Bruno was when his mother passed, wiped tears from his cheeks and sang softly along. Every lyric carried an ache that reached deep into the hearts of everyone in the room. It wasn't just Bruno's story anymore. It was their story of loss, of love, of the people they once said goodbye to too soon. When he sang the line, "I should have bought you flowers," the crowd answered him back, gently, almost as if comforting him, and held your hand. For a moment, the walls of Dolby Live disappeared. There was no fame, no stage, No distance between artist and audience. There was only grief, shared and understood by thousands. 6. The flashback, little Bruno and his mom to understand that night. You have to go back decades, to a small, modest home in Honolulu, Hawaii. Long before the world knew the name Bruno Mars, there was a little boy called Peter Gene Hernandez. His mother, Bernadette, was a Filipina dancer and singer who had once toured with a show band. She was the heartbeat of the family, loving, fiery, and endlessly supportive. It was Bernadette who gave him his stage name. She used to call him Bruno because, as a toddler, he reminded her of the wrestler Bruno Sammartino, strong, confident, unstoppable. From the moment he could walk, he could dance, she once told a local newspaper. And from the moment he could talk, he could sing. She was also his first audience. Bruno would perform Elvis Presley songs for her in their living room, wearing a tiny jumpsuit his father made. Bernadette would clap and laugh until she cried, telling everyone, "My son is going to be a star." Years later, when Bruno Mars was headlining arenas around the world, he would still call her before every big show. "She was my best friend," he said once in an interview, his voice softening. "She kept me grounded." So when she died suddenly in 2013 from a brain aneurysm, his world fell silent. 7. Silence after the song Back in Las Vegas. As the final chords of When I Was Your Man faded, the silence was deafening. No one clapped. No one screamed. They just stood there, as if frozen in time. Bruno lowered his microphone and turned away from the audience, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. His bandmates, men who had performed with him for over a decade, watched quietly. The keyboard player stood up, placed a hand on his chest, and bowed his head. Then the crowd began to applaud, not the usual roar of excitement, but a slow, rhythmic clap that grew into a wave of love. People shouted, "We love you, Bruno." Someone near the front whispered, "She's proud of you." Bruno looked up toward the ceiling, his eyes glistening, and whispered something that only the microphone barely caught. "I know she is." 8. Backstage tears. When the concert finally ended, Bruno left the stage in silence. He didn't rush to his dressing room. He walked slowly, towel over his shoulders, breathing heavily like someone who had just run a marathon of emotions. His drummer, Eric Hernandez, who is also his brother, followed him backstage. "You okay, man?" Eric asked softly. Bruno nodded, then shook his head. "I didn't think I could do it," he said, his voice breaking. "But I had to. I felt her tonight." He sat down on the edge of a couch, staring at his hands. "Every time I sing that song, I see her smile. But I can't." He stopped mid-sentence, tears filling his eyes again. Eric placed a hand on his shoulder. "She was there, bro. You know she was." For a long time, they sat in silence. The sounds of stage crew packing up echoed faintly in the distance. But in that small room, time seemed to stand still again. 9. The legacy of Bernadette. Fans often see the glamorous Bruno Mars, the superstar in sequin jackets, the Grammy-winning performer with effortless charm. But behind the fame lies the legacy of a woman who taught him everything about humility, discipline, and love. Bernadette wasn't just a mother. She was the foundation of Bruno's music. She taught him to blend passion with precision, to sing not just with his voice, but with his soul. In an old interview, Bruno once said, "My mom used to tell me, you can't fake soul. Either you feel it or you don't." That night in Las Vegas, he didn't fake a thing. He felt every note, every lyric, every tear. And perhaps that's why his music continues to resonate, because it's built on the love of a mother who believed in him long before the world did. 10. Fans around the world react within hours of the concert ending. Videos of the emotional performance flooded social media. Clips of Bruno whispering, "This one's for my mom," spread across TikTok, Instagram, and X, formerly Twitter. One fan wrote, "I've never seen Bruno Mars cry before. That was real. That was love." Another commented, "I lost my mom too. Watching this made me feel like I wasn't alone." By morning, the hashtags #BrunoMarsMom and #WhenDoesYourManLive were trending worldwide.